to Antony Loewenstein, who's a freelance investigative journalist, joins me now from occupied East Jerusalem. So right now, we always knew it was going to be really tight between Netanyahu's party and Benny Gantz's party, but it is looking as though Netanyahu's failed to get a majority of votes. What do you make of that?
On these figures, it looks that way, that the Prime Minister will find it hard to form a coalition. But in fact, what happened at the last election a few months ago was not that dissimilar. I mean, Israeli politics is always about making coalitions. And the problem is for Netanyahu that the kingmaker appears to be Avigdor Lieberman, who's a far-right nationalist who used to be friends with the Prime Minister and now seems to hate him, which doesn't mean, therefore, they can't form a coalition. I think one of the key things for people to remember is that the sad truth is it doesn't actually matter a great deal who might become Prime Minister, because the likely candidates, Netanyahu or Benny Gantz, actually have pretty similar policies when it comes to maintaining the occupation of Palestine. So many Israelis would like Netanyahu not to continue as Prime Minister, but on these figures so far, many people also seem happy with his Prime Ministership. But the bottom line in months to come, and we'll find out probably more in the coming weeks who will maybe form government in Israel, is that Palestinian parties are largely excluded entirely from the reality. So that's the reality of what's happening here.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about policies, because Netanyahu, of course, as we know, has made a direct appeal to right-wing voters by promising to annex West Bank settlements. But in reality, do any of the major political parties differ on that particular issue?
Well, not a lot. During the campaign, Netanyahu pledged, as he said, to annex the Jordan Valley, and his major rivals, the Blue and White Party led by Benny Gantz, said, "How dare you steal our policy? That was our idea." So the truth is that when it comes to these kinds of questions, although the exit polls would suggest that the joint list, which is a combination of a number of Palestinian parties, may well have secured about 12 or so seats, there's never been Palestinian parties in an Israeli government coalition ever in the country's history. And in fact, the majority of media coverage and political coverage in Israeli society today is so racist and incites against Palestinians so regularly that although there is a left in Israel, a more progressive side, they have very, very little political power. So it's pretty hard to be optimistic. I mean, most Palestinians you speak to in Jerusalem, in the West Bank, even more so in Gaza, have literally no hope that this kind of election will make a difference, because it's important to remember there are literally millions of Palestinians in the election today who aren't allowed to vote. In Gaza, for sure, in the West Bank entirely. They can't vote for a party or anyone who will affect their destiny. I mean, that's the reality of what occupation means now, for over 50 years.
Just on that issue, I mean, we know that the Arab-Israeli parties banded together to run on a joint list, and there was a call for a huge turnout from Arab-Israeli voters. In fact, the Likud party was complaining that there were a big turnout of Arab-Israeli voters and a lot of apathy amongst Likud voters. But even if there was a high turnout of Arab-Israeli voters, would that make any impact at all on the outcome of this election?
Well, potentially, yes, but it's important to remember that many, many Palestinians do not vote in elections. Even the ones who can vote choose not to because of a principled position that it's not going to make much difference even if they do vote. Of course, other Palestinians disagree with that. But ultimately, as I said, even if the joint list, the group of Palestinian parties, poll respectively, and it looks like on the current numbers they're going to be the third biggest party in the Knesset, no Israeli major parties will want to be in coalition with them. Now, that could change this time, but there's literally no indication that will happen. And in fact, both major sides, Likud, led by Netanyahu, and the Black and White Party, led by Benny Gantz, have equally said they have zero interest in partnering with Arab or Palestinian parties. It's almost like that group should just be ignored in society. So the truth is that moving forward, I think a lot of Palestinians are asking themselves, what kind of strategy do we have moving forward here, when a lot of these parties have been in the Knesset for years and have been unable to achieve very much because they're excluded by the system? And that, I think, is the real problem with what occupation means.
Antony, thank you very much indeed for your analysis there. Antony Loewenstein.